Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with coverage from round 1 of the 79th Tata Steel tournament held in Wijk aan Zee in the Netherlands in Europe. A great field in the Masters group. World champion Magnus Carlsen is there, his challenger Sergei Karyakin, who he defended his title against back in November 2016, is there, and also the winner of the Grand Chess Tour 2016, the American Wesley So, is playing. And the first round saw Wesley So with white against Magnus Carlsen with black, the two highest rated players, the only two in this field who are over 2800 ELO rating, played against each other. It's the 14th of January 2017. And let's look at this game. So white, Carlsen black, d4. And it's worth noting that So has not lost a game since July 2016. 43 games in a row he has been unbeaten. The last one to beat him was in the tournament in Bilbao in Spain, and his opponent was Magnus Carlsen. Carlsen played d5, and after c4, c6 we have the Slav defense. Knight f3, knight f6, and e2, e3 from Wesley So. This is called the slow Slav. It's avoiding a lot of theory after the other move for knight b1 to c3. Bishop f5 is the common move, and knight c3. Carlsen here played a7, a6, and this is a bit of a hybrid between the Chebanenko Slav and the bishop f5 variation against the e3 Slav. And most of the quotes in this review come from the tournament broadcast from Grandmaster Yasser Sarawan and International Master Robert Riss. And here So played knight e5. One of the ideas here is to push g2, g4. Carlsen played knight bd7, and that discourages g4. Let's see if now So had played g4. That's not a good move, because then there is knight takes e5, and the best answer is d takes e5, and then knight takes g4, and black has won a pawn. So did not play the g2, g4, he played queen b3. Threatening the b7 pawn. Carlsen played queen c7, covering that pawn, and here we get a lot of wood being chopped off. C takes d5, knight takes e5, d takes e5, knight takes d5, knight takes d5, and c takes d5. And now So did not take straight away on d5, he first played bishop d2 to activate his bishop. After queen takes e5, So could have taken here on b7, he did not do that. Let's have a quick look. Queen takes b7, then there's rook b8, and you can take that pawn on a6, then there's queen takes b2, and if white wanted any opening advantage, he has not got it. This position is very okay for black, it's equal. So did not take on b7, he played bishop c3 as an interim move, attacking black's queen. And black cannot cover the pawn on b7 and at the same time keep the pawn on d5 covered. So yes, he's a pawn up temporarily, but he's going to lose that pawn on the next move. He played the queen back to c7, So took then on d5, restoring the material balance. e7, e6, kicking the queen, and here the commentators thought queen b3 is the best move, but Wesley So decided to play queen c4. And the queens came off, queen takes, bishop takes, and rook c8. The bishop is attacked, so Wesley So played the bishop to b3, and now for a while the commentators thought this is quite nice for white, because how does black solve the problem of completing his development? He wants to castle, of course, but the bishop cannot really come out because then the g7 pawn is hanging. But Carlsen found a simple solution. He played bishop e7 anyway, and Wesley So could now have taken on g7. He did it a move later, so let's look at it then. He played first king e2, and now Carlsen could have castled to take that whole bishop takes g7 move out of the equation, but he decided on bishop e4, attacking the g2 pawn. If you want to take on g7, you have to do it now. For example, kicking the bishop first with f2, f3 is not good. Let's have a look. f2, f3, and then bishop c6. If you take on g7 now, then there's rook g8, like in the game, bishop e5, and then rook takes g2 is check, and you're going to lose the f3 pawn on the next move. So the f2, f3 move is not good, and Wesley So decided to take on g7 straight away. Rook g8, bishop e5, and rook takes g2. This has livened up things somewhat, but it's still very equal. You could think that white can now trap the black rook with bishop g3, and it looks dangerous for black. That rook is cornered in and will not come out, but Carlsen had judged this position correctly. Let's give you a variation. This is okay for black. Bishop f6, attacking the b2 pawn. Then, for example, rook ac1, rook takes, bishop takes b2, and rook c4. The idea that white might have is to take that bishop, and then that bishop will no longer be protecting the rook on g2, so then you can collect the rook with king f1 and king takes g2. So let's continue this variation. If black plays f7, f5, protecting the bishop, then you can try to win that trap rook by rook takes e4, f takes e4, and king f1, but then black simply sacrifices the exchange back. Rook takes g3, h takes g3, and the dust has settled, and we see that black is a pawn up, but the position is completely drawn. The bishops are of the opposite color, and even though black is the extra pawn, this is not a position with any winning chances for him. So Carlsen had judged that properly when he took on g2, and So had also seen this, and he played instead of trapping that rook on g2, he played rook ac1, contesting the c-file. Rook takes, and rook g5. Attacking the bishop, bishop f4, attacking the rook, and rook went to c5. Rook takes c5, bishop takes c5, and the remaining moves were blitzed out by both players. They only took a few seconds for each move. Bishop c4, b5, bishop d3, another pair of pieces gets swapped, and f5, f3, king d7, e4, king c6, activating the king, h3, h5, b3, bishop b6, just marking time, bishop e5, also marking time. The bishops are of the same color, but the pawn structure is completely symmetrical, and there's nothing to play for here for either side. Bishop c5, bishop f4 repeating moves, bishop b6, and bishop e5, and the game was drawn. This is what Magnus Carlsen said about the game afterwards. There's not much to talk about. So didn't play in the most critical way, then it only takes a couple of decent moves to secure the draw. When So plays against strong opposition, he doesn't take many chances. That's also why it's hard to beat him. He's pragmatic, that's his approach, and it got him far. I'm here to play chess and have fun. So-Carlsen was satisfied with a draw with black against his main rival in this tournament. All the other games were drawn as well, apart from one, and I'm going to show you the highlights of that game. This is Pavel Elyanov from Ukraine with white and Richard Rapport from Hungary with black. This is the position after the 24th move from Rapport, rook a8 to e8. What strikes is that beautiful knight on d3, and the commentators were thinking of ideas of bishop f1 to challenge that knight, and then there may be an attack from black starting with f5, f4. You should also know that Richard Rapport is a very creative, very active player who loves the initiative and who loves tactical attacking play. And that brought Elyanov to sacrifice the exchange here. He said afterwards that it was by no means forced, but he said, I just decided to go for it. Rook takes d3, sacrificing a rook for a knight, and after e takes d3, queen takes d3. White has only got one pawn for the exchange, but as Elyanov said, he felt that especially against his opponent, this was the right thing to do. Rapport doesn't like to defend passively, and Elyanov just took his most active piece away from him. Bishop b7, and the bishops were swapped, and Elyanov played knight e2. Let's look at his position. Yes, black is an exchange up for a pawn, but he is passive, he has no counterplay. The rooks want open files, and there are no open files on the board, and it's not easy to create an open file. White's knight has beautiful outposts. Look at the squares on d5, f4, and even g6 after the move h4, h5. And as Elyanov said after the game, objectively white is not winning, but it's most unpleasant to play this position with black. And of course, if you look at the pawns on d6, f5 and h6, they are also weak pawns and will be targets for the white pieces. So good practical winning chances for white. And as I said, especially against this opponent who wants to play actively at all cost. Rapport played rook f6 to protect the d6 pawn, knight f4, queen e4, and Elyanov did not want to swap the queens. With the queens on, the position is more difficult to play for black, so he played queen d2. Rook c8 with a possible idea of playing b6, b5 to activate the rook, getting an open file for that rook. And a very nice, very instructive move from Elyanov, a2, a4 to stop that b5 idea. Black's rooks still have no files to work on. Rook c5, rook d1, activating the rook, queen f3, knight d5, hitting the rook, rook f7, and queen c2. Here Elyanov said that he thought white was winning. One plan is to play rook d4 to f4, trapping the black queen. Rapport decided to play a7, a6 in a desperate attempt to open the b file, and Elyanov took that pawn on b6. In the interview afterwards, Elyanov did not talk about rook d4 here, with that plan of rook f4 to trap the queen, which still exists. He might have thought that after rook d4, rook takes d5, black can sacrifice the exchange back, but then after rook takes d5, rook f6, white has a winning endgame. He's a pawn up, and black has a lot of weaknesses. Elyanov took on b6 instead, taking that pawn, Queen e4, Queen c3, Queen e5, Rook d4, White still does not want to swap the queens, a5 to stop b3, b4 from White, Queen d3, eyeing up the d6 pawn, so rook c6, defending that pawn. Now the knight is hanging, so knight d5, king g7, and another instructive move from White, knight c3. The knight has been dancing around the board and is now aiming for the square b5, attacking the d6 pawn from there, but also keeping that b file closed that Black has opened up with that pawn sacrifice by playing a7, a6 a few moves ago. Rook f6 from Rapport and Rook d5 from Eljanov, and Rapport had enough and resigned. He's going to lose the a5 pawn as well, and still no counterplay, and White is now clearly winning. A very nice positional win from Eljanov, and also psychologically very strong, taking Black's active pieces away from him and forcing him into a passive defense, and Rapport was not up to that task. These are the results of the first round of the 2017 Tata Steel tournament. 6 draws and 1 win from Eljanov against Rapport, and it's Eljanov who leads the pack after 1 round. 12 more rounds to go. Hope you enjoyed the coverage of the first round of the 2017 Tata Steel tournament. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, please subscribe to my channel, and I'm looking forward to seeing your comments. And you also may want to have a look at my other channel, Chess to Progress, which is aimed for more beginning and improving players. This is Rick from Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.